The session will take place around the round tables at the end here of this room. So please everyone, join us in the sunny spot. It's a nice sunny spot at the end of the room here. So, welcome everyone. We're so pleased that you want to join us here this late afternoon. And there's always a bit of a risk to organize something after the big plenary and when people are actually looking forward to dinner. But really great to having you here. If you like to join this table, you're quite a number on that table over there. So it would be great to have a few more people here discussing energy access. So please, here at this table, also this table, inequality table, could benefit from another participant to get a well-rounded discussion. The purpose of this workshop is to discuss two different scenarios for the future, and both, I think, to us are both, scaring or hopeful, plausible, not plausible. We're not here to discuss those scenarios. We are here to take those scenarios that we have also sent out in beforehand to you as starting point for discussions. We will, so to say, live in these scenarios and consider how each of these two scenarios will affect the SDGs. So see this as an opportunity to have a conversation around the tables about the challenges for different SDGs. Well, you sit on a table where you will discuss one specific SDG, and to do that in an ordered way where we actually document while we talk by writing our ideas on pieces of paper. I will go through that. So this workshop we're organizing is done in two different sessions. So the first session is a shorter session today, 1 hour, where you will discuss the challenges for each of these different sustainability goals in two different scenarios. And Henrik will soon present to you what are these scenarios. You make a quick run through of the scenarios. So each table will discuss challenges under both scenarios. So we'll consider both the radical emission reduction scenario, which in essence is the scenario where we meet the Paris Agreement, and the high-end climate change scenario, which is actually the pathway we're on now, as society has developed over the last decades. Each of these scenarios have different challenges associated with them when it comes to meeting the Sustainable Development Goals, and that is what we are going to discuss today. Tomorrow, we have a little bit longer time. We have a 2-hour session where we will present results from today, and then we will divide on 4 tables again and downscale this to do 2 particular regions. West Africa region with the particular focus on Nigeria, and the Middle East, North Africa region with a particular focus on Saudi Arabia. So then tomorrow we will have opportunity to drill down and discuss more in detail where the rubber hits the road, where the real problems are playing out in real geographies, so to say. The discussions here are carried out under Chatham House rules. The only documentation that we do is documentation that you will craft jointly on the tables under the leadership of table leaders, 1 on each table. And could I ask the whole team to stand up so you could have a check? Henrik, Karina, Håvard, Nina. So, and my name is Kalle Halding, and we're a joint team from SEI and Uppsala University Peace and Conflict Research Unit. Thanks a lot. I will remind you that we're a little bit short of time. We're a little bit behind on schedule, but I've been told that the boat that will take dinners, the participants of the dinner across the waters will leave 6:20. So we have a little bit of leeway to go beyond the 17:40 time, the 20 to 6 time slot. But we will try to keep it as planned within an hour. So I will hand over to Henrik to introduce very briefly the scenarios.
Thanks. Oh, wow. Can I get on one too? Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. I will try to introduce the scenarios and the group work to you. How many of you have read the material that we sent out? Oh, quite a good proportion of people. Thank you so much. Let's see what we have. This is the starting point for the idea that we discussed in this little project group. What could we do in the session on climate change and possible challenges on security and development? So is this Paris Agreement, we call it an unconditional success, or will there be any problems associated with what this implies is an extremely radical emission pathway? And we wanted to try to contrast, as Kalle said, two scenarios. One on the other hand, very high-end climate change, and something along this way, extremely radical emission pathway. So you often see these kind of graphs. Economists call these damage functions, where the temperature increases to the right for you, the damage goes up, and it's not usually in economic modeling around impacts of climate change. This is not a linear function, it's usually something along this way. We can also think, I haven't seen it myself, but we can think about a kind of an impacts or a damage function regarding policies in trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. That goes conceptually the other way around. So if we would like to stay within low temperature increase, we need to do a lot regarding reducing the emissions of greenhouse gases. So this is only a conceptual graph, but you can trigger around a little bit and take the sum of these two graphs. It looks something like this. So what if there is an optimum somewhere in between extreme radical emissions of greenhouse gases or high-end climate change? So we wanted to contrast these two futures on the very far end here. So we wanted to construct one scenario focusing on impacts of climate policy. And this is something that the climate change and conflict or research community has not focused so much, what I know about at least. So we wanted to construct one scenario on this end with low temperature increase, but very ambitious reduction of greenhouse gases. And the other scenario then naturally comes on the other end with high temperature increase, but no or close to zero policy for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So these are the two extremes. We call them two extreme scenarios that we wanted to contrast in this small exercise. So when doing this, we took as a starting point a scenario architecture that I know many of you are familiar with, the scenario architecture that the climate change research community is currently using, and the IPCC used it in the fifth assessment report as well. So we took two of those socioeconomic pathways as a ground for building those two scenarios. So the first scenario, which is the sustainable development scenario. This is the very green future. For those who knows the scenario architecture, this is based on SSP1, Shared Socioeconomic Pathway number 1. So this is a scenario which is a very lucky one. People are happy. The Gini coefficient is developing the right way. We're reducing the overall energy resource use in this scenario. Inequalities is going down within countries as well as between countries. Renewable energy is more attractive, of course, and consumption is very much directed towards circular economy or the service economy. However, this kind of scenario, we think, also implies other challenges, and those are the challenges that we put on top of this scenario in order to stress this future a little bit. So, in order to get this very forceful policy in place so that we follow something along the Paris Agreement, you need both a lot of new innovation in green or renewable energies, but you also need quite forceful policy measures in order to phase out fossil fuels. Perhaps in this scenario, we also sketch something on geoengineering systems, not only carbon and capture storage, but also more sophisticated systems that need global governance, like, for example, solar radiation management systems. Those are global systems that we need some kind of global governance in order to cope with. Of course, we will see a shift in a scenario like this, countries that are sitting on big reserves on coal and oil, away from those countries, and we will see new geopolitical patterns towards countries which get more power that are sitting on new strategic materials, for example, for battery production, etc. The scenario says that energy consumption globally goes down. So one of the problems or challenges in a scenario like this is that how do we get access to energy in poor countries? Because we cannot really afford to have coal-based or oil-based energy in a scenario like this. So this is the first scenario that we would like to try to work around in the 4 different groups. The other one, more conventional, I would say, as Kalle said, this is very close to business as usual, and then it's not Paris then. It's business as usual if you extrapolate the current emission trajectories. So this is the very high-end climate change scenario. And the social development here is very, very much towards nationalism, securitization, and trying to control resources that you are in access to. International institutions are rather weak, and due to a slowdown in globalization, economic development is not that good in this scenario either. Population growth is quite dramatic in this scenario. The global population is something like 10 billion 2050. And I give some examples here. This is stuff from EASA database. For example, Nigeria has 400 million people in 2050 compared to 180 today. Saudi Arabia double its population. Russia slightly goes down, as we know. So this is perhaps more easily to see challenges in a scenario like this. So on top of this, then, this is a high emission scenario. So here we have stretched climate change as far as you could probably do in 2050. So the global temperature increase is something around 3 degrees, and this is a map. Don't care about what 75% means there. This is a map indicating global warming. It's quite serious up here in the Scandinavian countries. Sea level rise has risen with something like 40 centimeters. And importantly, in this scenario, if you stand in 2050, which this tries to depict, if you look forward to 2100, people expect something that around plus 7 degrees if business continues as usual in this scenario. So big problems here is, of course, displacement and forced migration. Food security and water security are the things that we focus on in this scenario. Just to exemplify with a number, water security, something around 1 billion people live under extreme water stress. And I don't remember the exact definition of extreme water stress now, but there is a definition out there on extreme water stress. Something around 1 billion people living under extreme water stress, 2050 in this scenario. So these are the 2 scenarios that you see in front of you. And we have tried to divide the table around which you're sitting into 2 columns, one for each of those scenarios. One is blue, I think, if I remember correctly, and one is red. Red symbolizes high-end climate change, and blue symbolizes then aggressive climate policy. So, as Kalle mentioned, what this session is all about is trying to look at challenges for some of the SDGs related to those 2 scenarios. So we selected 4 scenarios out of the 17, which are more like intervening variables between the scenarios and violent conflict. And those are number 2, number 5, number 7, and number 10. So now, the group exercise, what time is it? Good timing. The group exercise, the focus question for the group exercise is this. We have 1 SDG per table. So here we have, which one is this? Energy, and we have inequality, and we have gender, and we have number 2. Is correct? Yes. So the task for the group work now, and this is actually workshops. This is not a seminar. This is a workshop, and the purpose with the workshop is actually to work together. So this is very much based on your input to our exercise. You will get facilitated by 1 facilitator, as was presented previously. And this is the key question. Identify challenges, and we need to underline that with challenges using this kind of exercises, you usually mean threats and opportunities. This is very much a threat or risk-based exercise that we are doing, but if opportunities come up, please provide opportunities as well in the exercise. So it's about identifying challenges for reaching your SDG in the respective groups in those two scenarios. And the facilitators will explain the rules of the game in each of the group. I will only say a few words. This is a scenario-based exercise. This is not forecasting. So there are no forecasts. Those two scenarios are not trying to depict to you the most probable or the most likely way forward. These are two storylines that hopefully you can live with them. They are somewhat consistent. You can, of course, have a long discussion about internal consistency or probability around those scenarios. This is not the main aim of this exercise. We would like to try to work with those scenarios as a basis and accept them. Of course, we can comment and try to develop them further, but we would not like to change the whole scenario into something different, because we would like, in the work that we will do late tonight after dinner, we collect the work from different tables. So each of the two scenarios will be populated by your input in order to prepare for the exercise tomorrow. So if you can stick to the scenarios, that is good for the exercise that comes tomorrow. So, was there something I've forgotten to say? Don't think so. Now I hand over to Kalle.
Yeah. So now we will work for around the tables, and the table leaders will introduce the game. And then Henrik will come back at the end and take a stock of what we've been discussing around the tables today, very briefly. And then you're allowed to dismiss to go for funny things and evening activities. And please come back tomorrow. But we only will make a very short stock taking at the end today. So the rest of the discussions today will be here around the tables, creating the map of challenges. Yes, Paul.
So we're identifying challenges for each of the two countries.
No, not today. Today it's a global. Today we work on the global arena. So these are generic challenges. Then tomorrow we will do the downscaling we will prepare the downscaling tonight and present it for you tomorrow. So tomorrow we will discuss specific for those two geographies. Thanks, Paul. I think I hand over to the table leaders.